Hey, hi, and welcome back. This is Cancelian, or Cancelian, or Cancelian, or Sancelian. All of it works. We'll be going through some of some of the TextMod capabilities today again, or how to modify things and edit things in TextMod. Today we'll be concentrating on items. Base game items are probably familiar to all of us, but the items in TextMod allow you both to add items in this format, having an item in the inventory of the player. You can create these items, but also the items are a huge part of the functionality of text modding in creating both heroes and monsters, i.e. you essentially modify a base hero or base monster by adding items to it. We looked at this a bit in the first video, which you probably should watch before this one if you haven't. I won't be going through. There won't be the hell you call it a repetition. And in any case, here in our custom interface, if we enter any normal item anchor, it gives us options of modifiers that we can have, because again we can't have add items to the custom game, only modifiers. The modifiers the game suggests are all item, having anchor on everyone, or just having the item. Going in, I anchor in game. To create an item like this, you can create essentially you modify any number of base items that the game has available for you. We'll be going through some of the actual features. A more skilled content creator or an actual content creator would probably have something other than a WordPad document, maybe some sort of graphic even, but yeah, this is my playground. This is where I live. Anyway, first things first, a lot of the same spells that work for heroes in creating heroes that we went through last time also work for items. We'll take an example. Here's an anchor. We'll call it ding. Already this is the worst video ever made. Okay, here's an anchor called ding. Hooray! Same spell as for heroes. If we want to change the image of the item, this is gonna look like a thief. Incidentally, you can use any item size for an item. Custom images also work. We won't be going through those here, but if the image is very large, it does come with some layout problems. This giant forehead is slightly going to the facade here. And unique for items is tiers. Not unique for items, heroes have tiers as well. Different tiers, suffice to say. This is a tier 3 item. The anchor is made vastly better by looking like a thief. These are the very basics, allowing for a bit of editing. Side pos and the side position and facade we've both gone through last time. Let's say left 2, and we want to apply a facade, and the facade is the cat has decided to absolutely yell. Peace, Helia. Quiet. Fucking cat. Left 2 facade, and then we pick up some nice facade. Again, text mod, info, at the bottom, community side art, we'll go with pos alas, pos 1, 2, 3. Pretty side. Pos 1, 2, 3, 0. Now, at which point we have used the side pos, because you can target certain effects, certain item effects. Facade, which allows you to change the facade of a side position. So what we have is change the art of the 2 left sides. If we, instead of changing the facade, we can also do side SE. Whoop. What side SE does is changes the description of a side. It's not very meaningfully. It's not very meaningful by its own. By itself, it does very little. This is a side description. We copy this, and then we have an item that changes the descriptions of the left two sides. In game, it looks like this. The sides, this is a side description. This is very uninformative, don't do this. Again, by itself, not very interesting, but very useful later on when we learn a little bit more about, especially about hats. And then, oh, that's it, that's great. Now into creating actual sort of custom items. There are any number of, again, kind of spells here under API and item. This long and slightly intimidating list of different spells for creating items. What they do is, in all of these things, expressed out this way, create an item. Some of them are based on other entities, i.e. heroes and monsters. Some of them modify base items. Some of them use keywords, as you can see. Some of them are a little more complicated than that even. But today we'll be concentrating on what are the most used ones. Probably the most used one is K, i.e. keyword. For example, K engage, which does create for us an item that has no other features other than it adds engage to all sides. The game auto applies a tier to it, not necessarily the best at deciding those. Combining this then with the other things we've learned, let's go left K engaged, adding a side pose from here. Now we have an item that applies the engage only to the left side, a left monocle, if you will. We'll give it a name. We'll call it, I should really plan these videos in advance. We'll call it Bell, fountain of imagination. Engage to the left, called Bell. We'll give it an image. There should be, I think, a high-level item that has it. There we go, bronze bell. We will heartlessly steal that, and while we're at it, let's apply a tier 6, whatever. We've already run into problems. It hasn't applied the tier. Why hasn't it done so? Because of bracketing problems. Now currently the tier is being applied to the wrong part of the thing. This often happens if you're not doing your brackets right. I'm thinking it's applying it to here. In any case, we will bracket the whole thing. This is what creates the item. This is what modifies. No, this is what creates an item. This modifies the item, and then this as well. But this should work. And yeah, there we go. Tier 6. Happy accidents in that I can now get to explain this to you. Let's take another example. Do the bracketing this time so I don't appear like I don't know what I'm doing. We'll write 2K cruel. And since we're here, we can go through another functionality of items, which is you can combine items. Combining items happens with the hashtag, which is called risuaita in Finnish. This is important. It'll be on the test. Write to K cruel. What I like to do is I like to bracket these more for parsing than anything else, but sometimes it can create clashes and problems when things are being applied to the wrong thing. Write K cruel, and then we go another part which applies right to K oh my brain. Engage. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. We'll test this. Cat, please. I am recording a video. Can you not? I have a cat slightly in the way. They're probably confused why I am talking to thin air. Cat, I'm going to be doing the video while you're there, if that's fine by you. Here we go. An item that applies cruel to the two right sides and engage to the two right sides. Now, you might be asking if you could do it right to K cruel and then directly continue with K engage. And we will test this, and we'll discover that it doesn't work. Unfortunately, you have to apply them as essentially separate pieces of an item. It's different when you're applying them to a hero. Thief, item, left, keyword cruel. This applies the cruel keyword to left here, C. And then here we can do hashtag, chaining them, engage, copy, and it applies both of them very neatly. But as an item, you cannot chain them in this way. You have to separate them as I've done here. Just give it some maybe don't have to name it anything. We can just ignore that. You will recognize some items having sort of two parts to the effect. Let's see. For example, here, it's not add heavy to all targeted sites, add eliminate to all targeted sites, just all in one. This is a functionality of some of the inbuilt items in the game, the base game items. There are some ways you can sort of trick the player into thinking all of it is chained in such a pretty way, but we won't be going through that in this video. Now that we know the, let's call it the most important, or certainly the most common item application, we can go into another one, which I think is one of the most important, or that allows for most build around in text mode, which is hats. Hats in their simplicity, you've seen maybe some generated randomly in-game, where you go hat, thief, any hero or monster. Hat, thief, and it creates an item with this actually quite nice icon, which gives you an item that's a hat of a hero. Replace all sides with thieves sides. Hey. On the surface it's not amazing, but what it essentially allows for is freedom to edit my heroes and monsters very freely. For example, left hat thief. No, left 2 hat thief. And then what we have is replace the 2 left sides with 2 damage range and 2 damage, i.e. a thief's sides. This already allows us to do a lot of interesting items. For example, let's call this new thieves goods image. Oh, I'm just gonna randomly enter something and then we'll see if it's any good. Tier 2. I've created the world's fastest and probably worst item. Thieves goods. The thief is interested in ballet. This is entirely understandable. See, we've replaced the left 2 sides with the thieves sides. It also won't say the name of the hero when you're using side positions. Incidentally, you can also, I believe, go all hat thief if you want to format it without with descriptions of all the actual sides. It's a little more descriptive than replace all sides with thieves sides. Thanks to being able to sort of add pieces of hats or sides from a hat, you can do the most interesting things. Let's go thief. The most interesting thing, Jesus Christ. Thief eye rightmost. We're applying onto the rightmost side a hat. The hat is a statue. This will apply a blank to the right, to the thief here, which is already blank on a thief. We just have to believe that it's working. Now, this is a custom hero, or a base game statue, but we can customize. SD, and their sides are blank, 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 and 2 damage. So now we have a thief, and we apply an item to it on the rightmost side, and it is the rightmost side of the hat of this custom statue, i.e. the thief has 2 damage there. There's a faster way of doing it than with all of the zeros for all the other sides. We remove those, i.e. we have a statue with a left side, and we go rightmost is left of a hat, i.e. the left of a hat, this one, replace the left side with 2 damage, and then we'll apply the left side onto the rightmost side, i.e. less text, same effect. This one, same as this one. Since the statue hero, the custom hero you're using, you don't have to use a custom hero, but usually clearer. It's entirely customizable, so that we can go I, left, keyword cruel, keyword engage, and we can keep adding things into the hero. What we can also do is add facades. Again, let's just go with something random. 200. No, that's going to be into the big size. 150. Let's see what the lottery brings up. Hey, that's actually an engage side. 2 damage full engage. But this way you can create custom sides on your custom heroes. It also allows you to create better formatted, prettier items as well, just sort of not to attach to custom heroes or so, i.e. you can go left, since we had this one here. Let's showcase that one more time. Add engage to the left side. But if you wanted to do a specific side like you'd have on, say, short sword, we could sort of do left K engage, left hat statue SD 15-2, i.e. we're making the left side of whoever equips the item. This is a ball now. Image is still bronze ball. Anyway, the left is a 15-2 sides, and we apply engage to it. The problem then is that it's replaced the left side with 2 damage and engage to the left side. If you want to add a facade to it, the left facade, it gets even uglier. Let's not do that. Let's instead use a hat. Left 2 is a hat of a statue, the left side of which is 2 damage. We apply engage to that. And when you're applying facades, you have to apply them to specific sides. It will work if you just go I facade. It just won't do anything. I.e. here we can't go IK engage facade. We have to go I left keyword engage and then chain it with facade. We'll go with let's get an actual facade this time real fast. Something that's pretty. Spy 24-0. So now what we have is a hat that applies onto the left side. The statue is the custom hero of the apple with the hat we apply. 15 damage. Our side 15 is damage. 2 damage applied with or has the keyword engage and a custom facade. And what it does, since it is a hat, it formats it very neatly. Replace the left side with 2 damage engage facade inbuilt. Then you can add names and images and tiers to your liking. In any case, you can make probably the most commonly made type of item, and just very pretty. Now I'm gonna have a sip of water before I die. Couple more sort of very basic and very usable items you can create. One is T entity, i.e. trait of an entity. Any monster, or you can have anything, have its traits. Trait of a bee. Actually, you can't have the traits of anything because the bee doesn't have a trait. That's what I was, of course, meaning to tell you. But anything that has a trait, you can trait, i.e. trait of an imp. And what an imp does is on hit, damage the attacker for 1. This is an item by itself. We can go into game and equip it to someone. And now the hero has the trait. On hit, damage the attacker for 1. Again, we can make it prettier by, first of all, bracketing it. And then applying your names and such. Right? You can also directly apply traits to heroes, to custom heroes. Let's go with Thief again. And since we're applying the trait to a hero, we can't go trait Imp. The game is a little weird about this. The game does not want traits on heroes, but it does accept items on heroes. So what we do is we create an item that is the trait of an Imp. So attached it to the hero, and there we go. Doesn't show there. And there we go. Again, allows for customization of your custom heroes. Important to remember is that when you're doing replica, as you should with all of your custom heroes, we'll go in game with it and we'll discover it does not have the trait. This is because replica sort of takes off all of the items, the trait form of items. It does. Actually don't know 100% for certain which items it removes. I know you can modify sides. My left, keyword engage. A base or side modifications are allowed in the items. How the game parses this, I do not know. But this is easily solvable. We take the item and we put it outside the replica. The only thing one of the few things we put outside of the replica, we want everything that modifies sides or names or sort of the basic features here. But items of this sort go outside, and again in game the trait works. That's traits for entities. It's easier when applying traits to monsters because the game is happy with directly applying a trait to a monster. Wolf, trait Imp. It also knows how to actually display it here in the preview as well, unlike as we saw with the hero. Was something I wanted to go over here. Wolf, trait Imp. One thing to note is you can apply more than one trait to a monster or a hero as well. But the problem is the last word here is already an entity. So if we apply another trait like Wisp, what tends to happen... Hey, it didn't this time. Hooray. Let's see if it works here. IT Wisp. Maybe it just works better on monsters than I remembered. It should not be working this well. What should be happening, and what does sometimes happen, I promise, is this trait, or the item in this hero's case, is applied to this monster who's then traded, and you can't then have them both. Again, only a problem of bracketing. You can do this, and it works. Even though, in this case, for some reason, it already worked. But we'll ignore that, and we'll do it the right way, even if it works the wrong way, because at some point you're gonna find yourself having a hard time. Few more items. Base items is self and modifier, which is slightly more complicated. A lot of the modifiers apply to a lot of heroes. For example, let's take modifier, blessings. We'll go with divine 1. That was 2. This is 1. Divine 1 is all heroes side pips minimum 1. Does exactly as it only applies to side pips. It's the cursed version. Also applies to health and shields. With self, you can do... It doesn't work for all modifiers, but for many modifiers you can take self and attach it to the modifier, in which case you'll have an item that applies the effect of the modifier but only on whoever is wearing, wielding, equipped with the item. i.e., usually in the game you don't get any sort of feedback, but the item is working. The side pips minimum is now 1. For example, couldn't be weakened. It does not work with all modifiers. It has to be a modifier that applies clear and easy to parse for the game modifiers to all of the heroes or all of the monsters. And even some of those don't work with self. It's a little fiddly. Unfortunately, it's mostly a case of trying and failing and learning that way. The last two, item part and unpack, again going more into modifying base items, but also very important for both making custom items and for I'll get an example here of an item with 2 parts, because you'll want to use a lot of sort of very basic effects that are already built into items that have more than one effect. We'll take an example of a cursed item here, Pharaoh Curse here. Hooray, must be equipped -2 pip to all sides. Now I want to make an item that gives you -1 pip to all sides, maybe with some other effect, but we'll start with that. So I go Pharaoh Curse. I'll call it Sanselian Curse. It's the worst sort of curse. But what's this? Now it must be equipped. I don't want it to be the player to be forced to equip it. So how do I separate this? Now in the game considers these 2 different effects on one item, on one base item. And you can access either one of those by going, leave the name there for a bit, Pharaoh Curse part 0. It starts counting at 0, as it often does. That's the must be equipped effect. And then we go part 1, which is the one we want, which is the -1 pip to all sides effect. You can take apart a lot of the items that have several effects. Sometimes things that look like 2 effects are actually 1 effect. For example, this is not the best example, but this is 1 effect. It's not part 0 gives you the first side here, part 1 is 1, and so on. Or here, this sort of, yeah. No, but it's understandable from this. But now we can have our Sanselian Curse item. Let's give it tier 1, because tier 0, because it's not a cursed item anymore, because you don't have to equip it. -1 pip to all sides. This is how you can take items apart. Part also works on modifiers. Modifiers that have multiple parts. Or Infinite Chalice, for example. This is one that a lot of text modders will remember because it's a very useful one. Infinite Chalice says at the start of each turn +1 mana, at the start of every 4th turn +2 mana. We can take the first part of the effect by going part 0 and have just the first one at the start of each turn +1 mana. Again, this could be made into an item. This is now a modifier. But making a sort of a passive effect into a modifier takes a little bit more mojo than we are going to be going into in this video. And then the final item modifying little spell, which is Unpack. Unpack works with items that have conditions. We'll take the classic example, which is Determination. The first turn cannot die. There's a condition built into it. The first turn. So what we can do is we can go Unpack Determination. How do we write it? It's too late. Unpack Determination, and what we have is the item without the condition. Very fair, cannot die. Not everything that looks like a condition, again, is a condition. It's very, very specific. For example, Golden Thread, I think, should work with Unpack. A Golden Thread. Yep, +1 pip to all non-damage sides. Can't think of a good example of something that isn't a condition. In any case, allows you to modify items. Again, also works for many modifiers that have a condition. We've gone through essentially some of the quite basics, but I'd argue very important basics, in that all of these things are already enough to build very interesting things, items, heroes, monsters, so on and so forth. But there's ever so much more. Here we go to API, and as you can see, we haven't gone through everything here. There's still a lot to do with, a lot to learn about applying images, modifying images, how art works for items as well as for heroes. Really important sort of building blocks in a TextModders tool case, like splicing on it data, trigger HP data. These are larger and more complex things. We'll be going through those in a later video, but I hope this one was informative. I hope my cat didn't bother you over much. They're lying there like a furry sack of shit. Hope you had fun, hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.